Welcome to Frontline Focus. Tonight, we cover key updates in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Heavy fighting in Vuhledar underscores its strategic importance, with Russia facing significant losses. Mykolaivka's capture remains vital for Russian logistics. In Kursk, Bild reports a stalled Russian offensive, while Ukraine strengthens defenses. Russia's Pantsir systems provide limited protection for sites like the Crimean bridge. Diplomatically, Kamala Harris reaffirms U.S. support for Ukraine, but Zelensky returns without missile strike approval. Vuhledar. Historically, Vuhledar has been a focal point due to its strategic location, serving as a gateway to several other critical regions. The Russian advancement here signifies an attempt to break through Ukrainian defenses and establish stronger control over the area. This could potentially serve as a staging ground for further incursions into central Donetsk Oblast, given its proximity to key transport routes. The battle for Vuhledar has become one of the bloodiest for Russian forces, reports Forbes. Since late 2022, Russia has sought to capture the town, leading to heavy losses. Recently, the 57th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade breached Ukraine's 72nd Mechanized Brigade defenses. However, Russian success comes at a high cost, with thousands of troops and around 1,000 pieces of equipment lost due to Ukraine's effective defense strategy. Key Russian units, like the 40th and 155th Marine Brigades, have faced severe setbacks, with the 155th nearly destroyed by February 2023. Despite efforts, these units have suffered significant damage, losing about 6% of all Russian equipment in Ukraine. Ukraine's fortified positions have minimized their losses and effectively countered Russian assaults. While capturing Vuhledar might not change the war's dynamics, it questions the high cost of Russian tactics. Ukrainian forces are also challenged by having to counter misinformation and political distractions rather than focusing solely on defenses. Mykolaivka. Located in the Donetsk region, Mykolaivka's capture would provide Russia with a crucial logistics hub, facilitating the movement of troops and supplies. The area has been contested in past conflicts, and its control is vital for maintaining supply lines and exerting regional control. This advancement could disrupt Ukrainian defensive operations and bolster Russian strategic positions. Krutyi and Krasniy. These locations, while less prominent in previous reports, underscore a broader Russian strategy aiming to consolidate and solidify areas in eastern Ukraine. The focus on smaller towns and villages indicates an effort to encircle larger Ukrainian-held cities by securing surrounding areas, disrupting communication and supply lines. Vuhledar and Staromaiorsk. The clarification of the line near Vuhledar and Staromaiorsk suggests a recalibration of front lines. Vuhledar has historically been important in previous skirmishes, acting as a buffer zone against further encroachments. The clarification indicates either a stabilization of territorial control by Russian forces or a successful Ukrainian counteroffensive to restore previous lines. Russian counteroffensive in Kursk region fails, reports Bild. Bild reports that the Russian counteroffensive in the Kursk region has stalled. Despite advancements south of Krasniy on September 17th, Moscow's goal of reclaiming Ukrainian-occupied territories by mid-October appears unrealistic. Ukrainian forces are reinforcing the area, ready to defend and outmaneuver Russian troops, forcing them to defend on multiple fronts. Previously, President Putin set a deadline for Russian forces to regain full control of the Kursk region by October 1st, but this objective now seems unattainable. Ukrainian troops have successfully repelled a massive assault by Russian forces near Peskino on the Kupiansk front. This was reported by Yuri Fedorenko, the commander of the Achilles UAV Strike Battalion of the 92nd Separate Assault Brigade, on Telegram. On September 26, 2024, the enemy launched a mechanized assault involving around 50 Russian armored vehicles and airborne troops advancing towards Kolesnikivka and Krulakivka. Ukrainian forces destroyed 14 units of enemy equipment, including 5 infantry fighting vehicles, BMPs, and 3 tanks, among others. Total losses for the Russian forces amounted to 40 units, with 26 being damaged, including 10 tanks and 10 BMPs. The Russians have installed 2 Pantsir air defense systems on metal towers on the island of Tuzla in the Kerch Strait, Radio Liberty reported. This will not save the Crimean bridge anyway. Harris pledges support for Ukraine's victory in war against Russia. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has reaffirmed her steadfast support for Ukraine during a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky, as reported by Andriy Yermak, head of the presidential office, on September 27th. Harris emphasized the importance of involving Kyiv in decisions about the war's outcome and condemned any proposals to cede Ukrainian territory as unacceptable. She vowed to work towards Ukraine's victory, security, and prosperity, asserting that U.S. support is driven by strategic interests rather than charity. Harris highlighted the necessity of defending democratic values and upholding the international order. During this time, President Zelensky also discussed Ukraine's victory plan with U.S. President Joe Biden, covering its diplomatic, economic, and military facets. They instructed their teams to collaborate on the next steps. On October 12th, Biden will convene a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group in Germany, where he and Zelensky will further evaluate these plans. Russian teen sentenced for attempted donation to anti-Putin group. A 19-year-old from Bielsk, Danila Yakovlev, has been sentenced to 15 years for treason and financing terrorism, according to independent outlet Mediazona. The court ordered Yakovlev to spend the first 2 years in prison, followed by 13 years in a high-security penal colony, and fined him 100,000 rubles, 970 euros. Yakovlev was found guilty of trying to donate to the Freedom of Russia Legion, an anti-Putin paramilitary group fighting alongside Ukrainian forces, classified as a terrorist organization in Russia. Arrested in January by the Altai Region Federal Security Service, Yakovlev allegedly attempted to transfer amounts as small as 5,000 rubles, 48 euros. An anonymous source suggested he lived predominantly online, describing him as having an oppressed personality type. Zelensky leaves Washington without long-range strike approval. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is returning from Washington without Western approval for long-range missile strikes in Russia, The Times reports. He pressed President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to allow the use of British Storm Shadow missiles or American ATACMS. The U.S. has not changed its position, despite Russian President Putin's warning that a Western-backed air attack could provoke a nuclear response. Biden announced a major aid package for Ukraine, while Harris criticized Donald Trump's suggestion that Ukraine should have yielded to Putin. Zelensky also met with bipartisan senators, including Republican Lindsey Graham, who noted Zelensky's push for strike approval to pressure Putin into negotiations, warning of severe consequences if not granted.